I've always hated that bridge.
It's the key to everything. They can't resupply their soldiers and they can't fight.
Blowing stuff up is the most fun you can have.
Yeah, well, I've blown up shit.
Blowing things up are good fun.
The explosions are fantastic.
I blow up stuff very, very well.
Luscombe Bridge. Couldn't have made the movie without it. A magnificent, huge, spectacular, beautifully lit, enormous bridge over what will be an enormous river, where we could drive a tanker and build a toilet block and have a paddock full of cows. I mean, you couldn't have made the movie without that location, and that we found it is just brilliant.
Going through the script, I was waiting really for where's the big booyah? And sure enough, Stuart Beattie delivered, because there's the big explosion hanging out there with the whole scene built around it.
In our story, what they're actually going to do is steal a tanker, the two girls, and they're actually going to drive it to the underside of this bridge, and then they basically set it up to blow so that the whole thing will then blow and cascade into the river.
We have a location, so it was really important to basically try and previs the whole scene. So before we went to shoot, we could basically plan the sequence.
Sadly, the authorities had some objections to us blowing up a real bridge. So it was kind of a toss-up between, do we make a big miniature of some description, or do we use CG techniques to fake the entire landscape and bridge?
3D explosions and 3D animations of objects and 3D water, all of those things are really, really difficult to do.
It wasn't hard for Chris and I to come immediately to the same conclusion, that this should be a miniature and it should be as big as we could possibly make it.
This is the miniature. The miniature is actually going to be 30 metres long.
A lot of thought also has gone into how the bridge collapses and how we control that collapse without losing control of the bridge.
I had a chat to them before. What they're sticking on now, which is supposed to be rivets, they're actually lentils, little lentils. It's so cool.
Michelle McGay, supervising art director for the film, did an astounding job actually copying the Luscombe Tyre, the surrounds, the bush, the little fences. It's hugely accurate.
It's pretty wild. It's the land of the giants when you're walking around that set, because it looks perfect. It was a great match.
My decision to run a 6-scale bridge was based around, at a 6 scale, you would end up with the bridge was about 50 metres long, with the extension of the grasslands was sitting on either side and the other extensions that we had. It was quite doable to actually carry that, move it, put water underneath it and grade the whole area and make it work in that respect. We had the real bridge with second unit lit, and so I could actually get plates around that, and we blew up 3 pots holding 5 litres of petrol to get the colour and the lighting around that area. And so you get the beautiful dapple light and everything falling around the real bridge. When we then got to the miniature, we would find exactly those same positions. We'd move in 1/6 of the distance and then reshoot it again at 1/6 of the scale. That gave us the opportunity to have miniature explosions, miniature movement, but actually still marry it with the real landscape that came from the Luscombe Tyre.
Lloyd, Finney Moore and Chris Godfrey then proceeded to spend a lot of time looking at things blowing up. Lloyd had a vast range of different chemicals and different combinations, different pressures, different ways of igniting.
Lloyd, dear Lloyd, who likes to blow things up. One of the things about the burning that we had off it, we actually wanted this big red burn. So you've got a roiling red burn in the middle of the black smoke. So it goes naphthalene explosion, and then the diesel with Kero under pressure was the thing that actually followed up from that. And that actually filled out a lot of what the backing plates were, and those huge burns that make it look as though something serious has actually exploded. When we were doing it, and we had a real tanker out there, and it had real fuel in it, and I'm running around going, oh, let's just shoot a reference with flames over here and flames over there, and that got a real big no-no.
This is what's going to blow up. We were talking the other day, they were saying they're going to put all the explosives in here, in all these things, and they're going to have it blowing up in sections.
The idea is the tank actually explodes, lifts and collapses into it. Lloyd had actually organised a pneumatic lift, and it was actually driven by a pneumatic pull that actually dragged this way, and there was a collapse mechanism that would actually drag it. You can actually see it fly up under. And then after the tanker actually goes off, then the bridge for storytelling has to actually separate that way so that it can never be fixed. We had an 80-tonne crane with a spreader bar above, and we had lines coming down that actually held the bridge. And with electric motors, we could pull and move the bridge. The interesting thing is it was so well made, we had to really work hard to actually damage this sucker. The last point of the electric motors would come down on metal wires, and the last part of the metal wires then turned into a nylon fibre. So at any time, we could actually slice it free. So there's a moment of anticipation, failure, and then the whole thing drops.
It's obviously always theory until you get out there and put it into practice. So it was a sort of nervous sort of moment thinking, okay, well, have we done this right?
Somebody called action.
3, 2, 1, action!
Cameras rolled.
And God only knows, it was glorious, and we thought, this is actually going to work. We let it fly, and this thing's starting to roll.
Breaths were held.
Everyone had a little tear, and they were all going, it's going to work.
And the bridge didn't collapse.
And it actually went, boop, just hung there. And that's when we rethought the back section.
When the rushes came in from the bridge chute, everyone was very excited, except for the fact that the bridge never actually fell into the water like it was supposed to. So we had to, pretty much construct that in the editing room. And at the end of the day, what's in the film, I think, works brilliantly.
Yeah, I guess we always knew that we were going to have to do some sort of 3D, but it was always going to be a mixture of the live action, the miniature, and CG. So we LiDAR scanned the entire location, so you can basically then translate that into the computer and give yourself, the bridge, the location of trees, fence lines, and all that sort of stuff. We knew where everything was going to be.
Quite late in the process, we realised that we needed some more impact from the second explosion. It was big, but it still didn't have enough impact. There wasn't a moment that would actually hurt the ribs of the viewer. So we needed some additional thing, and Chris Godfrey then came up with the idea of a shockwave.
You'll notice it hits the trees, it takes leaves off the trees, it bows all of the grass down.
Is a combination of live action explosion elements and full CG created explosions. The water that you see was actually, one night we snuck up to North Head and shot some plates of the ocean, and we comped in some plates of turbulent ocean that worked really well in this scenario, going from a slow moving river into something that would be quite affected by an explosion of that size.
The film cameras were running at 150 frames per second. The Phantom was running at 1,000.
The Phantom footage was spectacular footage, there's no question about that, but we couldn't use it at 1,000 frames a second. It was too high speed. It was taking too long for anything to happen.
One of the big problems with a set piece like the bridge exploding is that, one, it's very loud, and two, that it goes on for some time. It's not just a single bang. It's very easy to get the sound up to a really high level and thump people out of their seats, but you can't keep that going for 3 minutes. Whereas if you can say, oh yeah, that's the truck hitting the support, that's the rivets popping out, that's the wires breaking on the side of the bridge, it makes it into a story rather than just this one moment.
There was one particular sound in the bridge sequence which was quite critical to story, which was the Zippo lighter that Andy Ryan, who plays Chris, has. As he's running down towards the tanker, you hear it click. You don't see it, you just hear it.
As an audience, you kind of go, I know what he's going to do, I know what he's going to do. And I think that's very exciting for an audience. It didn't have a big close-up of the Zippo lighter. It let me work out that that sound was the Zippo lighter. It doesn't matter for the story particularly, but it's a really nice little thing that hooks the audience into the film each time. And a series of those things are fantastic.
It wasn't, I guess, until we were back at Fuel that we sort of pulled into the computer and lined it all up that we were kind of, like, it worked.